Today I'm going to turn this green wreath into a Grinch inspired wreath to match our beautiful Grinch tree. The tree itself is flocked. Obviously I have a green wreath here, so I'm going to make a few adjustments so they will match together. It's Nicole from mychristmas.com.au. Hope you enjoy. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is, as I said, I've got a green wreath. I love these lovely thick wreaths that we have, but because my tree is flocked, and sometimes I mix between the two, so that's why I didn't want to go with a flocked wreath. I'm going to add though some of our cedar spray flocking, and what I've done here is I've broken it down into smaller pieces. So let's just cut one of them down. I'm going to start with 3, and I'm hoping that's enough to get the job done. I'm using a large cutter here. We do have them on sale, but you can use a cutter that you get from your hardware store. This is, if you do a lot of crafting, this is really handy. Otherwise, it's really not necessary. Okay, so I've cut 3 of these down into 3 separate pieces. So I've got 9 little pieces, and I'm going to see if I can then just glue these around my wreath just to give a touch of the flocking to it. And to glue them into place, using my hot glue gun, I'm just going to add a little bit down the seam, the stem. And when you add something like this, you do want to work some of it into the middle a bit more and some of it out a bit wider, so you're working not just always around the middle. We'll have a lot going on with this wreath, so I don't feel I need to overfill it. I just wanted to have that little bit coming through. I'm going to save these 2 pieces, and then I can break them down into smaller pieces if I want to at the end, which means that I can just add that extra little bit of flocking if I feel like it needs it. So let's just leave that there. So at the moment I've really used sort of 2.5 of the flocked pieces just to give me a little touch of that coming through my wreath. The next thing I'm going to do, I did this in my wreath the other day and I really loved the effect. I used a white version of this same sort of wispy pick, and I'm going to layer that into the wreath to give me a lovely whimsical base. So you just want to bend the stem and make sure all of the little bits or your branches are kind of sticking out. It's Grinch, so you know you really want that sort of touch of whimsy happening. Actually, I'm going to have a bit more coming out on the outside there, and then I can simply layer this into my wreath using my wreath foliage to attach it. This is all wired, so you can sort of shape the stems of this to sit the way you want. You don't need the long stems for this, so that's why I'm cutting them off. Feed the first one underneath the second one so that they look like they just join in together. They look like a garland, really. I only want to use 3 of these sprays. I don't think I need to go 4. I just need to even them up a bit. Okay, so now we have the lovely lime base with our little bit of flocking. Gives us lots of sort of fun already with the wreath, and I think it's a really lovely way to start. Because I often think the Grinch is kind of very whimsical and fun, I do often use larger size pieces. So I'm actually going to start with 3 quite large onion shape ornaments. These are wired, which means I can tie them onto the wreath. If you wanted to, you could glue them in, but since they've already got the wire on them, I'm just going to use that. I have shown this before. When you have a wreath, it's worth checking the back of the wreath. Sometimes, or they all will have some sort of support bar that goes across here. This particular wreath has 6 of them. So I will often work in 3s so I can divide the wreath into thirds, making it easy to get a nice even coverage around the wreath. So I'm going to work with 3 of these onions, Therefore, I'm going to work to connect it to every second one of these bars by just using my hand and positioning my onion ornament into the foliage, and I'm pulling the cord through underneath. And when you pull it through, you do need to make sure you've therefore, it's just come off. You want to make sure you're wrapping it around the bar itself, so there's no point just tying it around the back and not actually having it connected to the bar, because it won't sit nicely. And I do like to try and sort of pull that in quite tight so that it's solidly connected. So all I've done here is I've just twisted the wire around the back of the around that crossbar to make it secure. And now I'm going to just connect the other two, and that will give me nice even thirds to my wreath. And you can see I really am pulling that in nice and tight. So I do want it to sit nice and tightly, and then adjust your foliage as well so that you've got all of the picks looking the way they want as you go. Once again, I've just located in my hand at the back the crossbar, and I'm going to feed this wiring on either side of that. So now we have our thirds. So when we have our thirds to our wreath, it means that we can easily replicate each of the things that we do in each of the sections, making it a lot easier to keep a very even, pretty looking wreath. Right, so I've got, as I said, large elements that I'm putting on this because I just think that the Grinch sort of looks like a lot of fun, so I like to use the bigger pieces. So these are quite big, and I'm actually going to work these into my piece as well. And then I've got some baubles here, and then some smaller baubles to fill. And I also brought to the warehouse some of these little starbursts that I thought we might even glue into place. But we'll see if we need that once we've got everything else going on. If you're going to tie your baubles onto your wreath, then you need to glue the caps, because the caps, when you pull them tight, can come off. So the way to do that is to run glue around the edge of the cap. And then also you need to have glue in the middle there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually tie two of these together, and I'm going to group them. I'm going to have two bunches of these in each of the sections, because then in between I'm going to put my Grinch signs and layer them in there. Okay, so I've glued all the caps on our green balls. As I said, because the red balls are wired, I don't need to glue those ones on. So I'm actually going to simply use the, leave the wire on this wound up. I just find that that's a little bit tricky when you're pulling the two together, and use some of my fine wire, which is here, and group the balls together, two on one piece, and then I always just twist the two together, so it just helps when you're attaching them into your wreath not to pull the caps off. And so we'll end up with 6 bunches of these balls that we can put through here. Okay, so now I have my bunches of baubles on here, and I'm going to simply tie them slightly more. I've got 2 per section, So slightly more to the left and the right, because I'm going to put the bigger sign in the middle, and I like to tie it right through the foliage onto the frame in the back. When you tie them on also, I will generally have one like the green on the outside there, and then the next one have the red on the outside, just alternate them backwards and forwards. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to attach my Merry Grinchmas signs. I don't want to use the cord here. We use these cable mounts a lot when we're decorating. We just find they give us lots of options with our signs. Put one on the back, and it means I can pull that sign in, and if I use the hole here, it would be upside down. Whereas if I cable mount the back, it means that the sign will stand up nicely for us. So because the signs obviously have got words on them, I want to work out exactly which way the wreath is going to hang, so that all of my Grinchmas signs are facing upwards. So let me just take a moment to work that through. Okay, so Hugh's been holding this for me so that I could have a bit of a play with where I want to position my signs. So I've kind of laid them out where I want them to be, working between my bunches of balls where I can. And what I want to do now is attach each of those into its position, and then I'm going to attach a cable mount sort of at the bottom of where I want to attach it. I haven't actually done this on wood, so I'm hoping that they hold. They're just adhesive strips on this. If they don't, I can try gluing using the hot glue gun to glue them on. So with this one, because I'm going to sort of attach it in on the edge here, I'm going to put the cable mount sort of on that side, and that should make it easier to pull it in there. We can also use some baubles at the back to try and keep this, give them the height that we want. So I've got one more pack of baubles that I'm going to fill when I'm done here. And also you can see with these, I'm trying to sort of not have all of the words lined up. They're all on a bit of an angle. So again, I'm going to, with this one, I'm going to put my cable mount down here. I find it easier to have long pieces of fine wire. You know, you can cut it off at the end if you need to, but it just means when you're trying to feed it through the piece, it just seems to be a lot easier to me. So I've just fed the bind wire through the back, through the cable mount, and then I'm going to feed that through my wreath. And I don't want to really knock the other ones out, so I'm just going to be really gentle. Get my bind wire, put that through on this one, and I'm going to attach this to the front part of the frame. When I've had a look, I don't actually like this one sort of on the side as much as I had it. So I had it sort of positioned so that it was really sitting on an angle. So I'm actually going to put another cable mount down underneath it and have it a little bit more centered on there. So it's always handy having a few more cable mounts just in case you want to change your mind. It makes it very easy. It doesn't matter, it's on the back of the piece and no one's going to see it. Much easier doing this than trying to reposition the piece itself over and over again. And finally, I've found when I've stood this up, I just again felt this bottom one wasn't quite sitting as strongly as I'd like it to. So I'm going to do a second cable mount into the corner here to keep it on an angle upwards rather than flat, and making sure that it sits exactly where I want it to. There we have it so far. I'm going to work with just my green balls. These are our 7cm ball packs. So great fillers when you're making a really lush, full wreath. also great fillers on the tree. And all I'm going to do is spread them. I've got 20 of these, so I've got plenty to just spread them around where I feel like I've got a few gaps. And to do that, I'm going to just glue them on. You can see I'm using some of these balls right on the inside and the outside of the piece because you want to make sure when anyone looks at it, it looks like it's fully covered all the way around. I am going to put one of these at least in. I'll see how if I need a couple. So I thought they'd look nice in here. So I just ran some glue along the back. I think these look really cute, so I've decided I am going to put all three in, and I'm sort of ended up working them close to my onion again because I've got three. It seemed to work naturally that way, so I'm going to fit that one sort of into space here, and then I'll fit one up the top. So again, I'm kind of just flattening the back a little bit. Help me attach it. Decide exactly where I want it to attach. This is actually I'm going to sit it on the green ball that I've got on there. Final one, just going to work up the top there. And again, it's going to end up sort of sitting on this lime ball, I think. You can see this was a pick. I just took the pick end off this so that it turned it into a really sweet ornament. So I kept these couple of little bit of flocked branch, so I'm just going to add a couple of those in where I can see a bit too much green up here. Break them down into smaller pieces. And the last thing I'm going to do is I've actually just taken a whole lot of the little balls off these. They were just ball picks in the two-tone green and the red, and so we've just wiggled them off the picks, and that gives me all these sweet little balls. And now I'm just going to use these balls and spread them around, gluing them on the wreath just to add that final little touch. You have pulled it out of the pick, so you've got a bit of foam normally showing on these, so you just want to if I look at, oh, this one doesn't have any. On here you can see there's the white from the foam, so that's where I'll glue so that it's not sticking up. On these ball picks there are bigger balls and small. I've actually just chosen to use the bigger ones, again because this is quite a bulky piece, so I don't think there's much point adding the small ones. There it is. Our Grinch inspired, or very Grinchy wreath. All of these materials are on the website mychristmas.com.au, but you can also obviously use your own pieces. 10cm size baubles for our bunches of 2, so that's 4" for anyone in America. 7cm, I think that's 3.5" for the little filigreens. These big onions are 15cm or 6" size, and then we've got these Grinch signs and some extra little sprays in here on a 60cm or 2-foot wreath. It's Nicole from mychristmas.com.au. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've enjoyed, subscribe to the channel, enjoy crafting, and have a sensational day. See you.